In Colorado, Denver's top prosecutor says that she is opening a grand jury investigation into the actions of 3 police officers who wounded 6 bystanders last month while shooting at an armed suspect in a crowded downtown Denver nightlife zone. Before we watch the video, I want to warn you that what you are about to see is indeed disturbing. So if you're going to be triggered, turn away. Now is the time to walk out the room, or maybe just look away for a few minutes. Newly released body camera footage shows Denver police officers firing 7 times at suspect Jordan Waddy on July 17th. Waddy was hit, and Denver police say the wounded bystanders received non-life-threatening injuries and are recovering. Authorities say that Waddy, who is in police custody, also suffered non-life-threatening wounds. He has been charged with 3 counts of possession of a weapon by a previous offender and 1 count of third-degree assault. The officers involved are on administrative leave pending an internal investigation. Waddy's attorney, Tyrone Glover, joins us now. Welcome, Attorney Glover.
Thank you for having me on.
We're seeing far too much of this. And I wish I could say that we're surprised or that it's shocking or anything like that. But as you know, it simply is not. What is it, though, that you can tell us about the difference between the narrative, the version of events that the police officers are giving for their justification for shooting what seems to be out of control through a crowd and what actually happened?
Yes, and I agree with you. Not shocking, but absolutely disgraceful. And the police's narrative has actually shifted and changed over the last several weeks. When they first came out, they said that my client, Jordan Waddy, was pointing a gun at them, that he was armed. But then when the body cams came out this week, we saw a very different picture. We actually see Mr. Waddy, not threatening the officers. He has a weapon, but he throws it off to the side, and it's flying through the air 8 feet away from him before they even start firing shots. After which time, they fire 7 more times at my client, Jordan, and at 6 other innocent bystanders who were just there trying to get some food from the food truck. Absolutely ridiculous.
Right. Well, and it seems obvious that departmental guidelines were not followed for what would be necessary by use of deadly force, especially where there were so many. They can't claim that they were doing it in defense of others when others ended up shot through their actions. What is your information now, first of all, on how your client is doing medically and on how the others are doing?
Yeah, and to your first point, they were responding to an alleged bar scuffle. They were walking up after there was an alleged scuffle with their weapons drawn, right? It started off excessive before even the first shot was fired. And these innocent bystanders, we had one young lady get shot through the shoulder, a gentleman shot in the leg. My client is an absolute miracle that he didn't die. He was shot 6 times, and he's struggling. He's a positive guy. He is thankful that he didn't die that day, but he's having trouble. He has numbness in his leg. He has trouble breathing because he was shot through one of his lungs. He's going to have a long road to recovery and undoubtedly complications from this later in life. He's a young man and can maybe bounce back temporarily now, but as he gets older, he's going to suffer because of this great injustice.
Were you representing him prior to this, or have you been brought on as a civil attorney who's going to be representing him in this matter going forward?
I've been brought on as a civil rights attorney going forward, but I'm working closely with his criminal defense lawyers in a coordinated effort to try to bring justice to this young man and bring attention to what's going on here in Denver, Colorado. This needs to be in the daylight. This needs to be under the national spotlight. The Denver Police Department should not be able to hide behind their local media. And we want to get justice for Jordan, and we want the nation watching while we do so.
Absolutely. So what next steps? I understand you're saying all the right words. You're saying that you're going to try to get justice, but have you been in contact with the police department? Is there anything that you can share about where things are with that?
Where things are for myself is we're looking to file a civil rights lawsuit as soon as practical. In Denver, Colorado, we were actually, in Colorado period, we were one of the first states to get rid of qualified immunity for officers. And so I can bring a lawsuit under the state constitution, and the officers cannot hide behind qualified immunity the way that they have been able to in so many federal 1983 lawsuits. So we are teeing up a lawsuit as soon as practical. We want to make sure we get it right. So we're dotting our I's and crossing our T's. And we're also trying to make sure, in working with his criminal attorneys, that he is treated fairly and gets due process in the criminal courts as well.
Well, that's excellent to hear. I'm glad that you explained that distinction because certainly we had hoped to be able to get rid of qualified immunity with the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, which did not go forward in this past Congress. I am still hopeful about more in addition to the executive actions signed by the president. But the fact that they will not be able to, at least in your jurisdiction, be protected such that they don't have any personal consequences, any personal financial consequences for their actions is very good news indeed. I want to bring in my panel and see if they have any additional questions. I'm excited to welcome, none of them strangers to me and all of them experts, so I know we're in for a treat tonight with what they're going to have to share with us. Dr. Julianne Malveaux, she's Dean, College of Ethnic Studies at California State University. We have Dr. Omekongo Dibinga. He is a professional lecturer, School of International Service at American University, and a former teacher of my children. Just thought I'd throw that in there. He's an all-around great, smart guy. We have Renita Shannon. She's Georgia State Representative. Welcome to all three of you. I'll start with you, Dr. J. I obviously talked about what I think is good news about this case, but do you have any thoughts and do you have a question for our attorney?
Sure. First of all, attorney, thank you for your work and for basically pushing this. It's very important. My question is about the body cams, the lack thereof. Why didn't any of those police officers have their body cams on? I think it was a bystander who captured the most important video. But increasingly, since what happened to George Floyd, police officers have been told to put your darn body cams on, and they just won't do it. Can you explain that to me, please?
In Colorado, the jurisdictions can essentially decide what their body cam policies are going to be. And there's some jurisdictions where they say, look, the second that you're out of your police cruiser, the second that you're on the street, that body cam is on and the sound is on. But Denver, there's discretion. They oftentimes will cover up their body cams. As you see in the video here, they don't start the sound oftentimes until after they start shooting or after the incident concludes. So you don't know what these officers were saying to Mr. Waddy, whether they told him to drop the weapon, which is exactly what he did and was never pointing it. The discretion that they give to some of these departments, and specifically Denver, oftentimes works out in their favor when they're trying to cover up some bad police misconduct.
Dr. Dibinga, do you have a question for our guest?
Yes. First of all, thank you, Mr. Glover, for the work that you're doing for our community. It's greatly appreciated. The question I have for you is, what are you going to say to those people who are going to say, oh, my gosh, he should have just complied. He should have never had the weapon. The people who are going to ignore all of the other people who got shot, who are going to say, oh, it's his fault because he had the weapon. Like you said, he didn't draw and point it towards them. He was getting rid of it like they would say to do, drop your weapon and the like. But these guys who are going to do everything to put all of the blame on him, the victim, what do you say to them based on what you know about this case?
Possession of a weapon in Denver, Colorado, in the state of Colorado, in the United States, is not a death sentence. You don't get to use lethal force against somebody simply because they are in possession of a weapon, legal or illegal. And when we talk about compliance, if you watch the video, he threw the gun to the ground. He surrendered. He disarmed. That gun was 10, 15 feet away before the first shot was ever even fired. And then they fired 6 more times. They were never in any danger. They originally held him for menacing, which is essentially threatening someone with a weapon, brandishing. Those charges were never brought because there was not probable cause, not an inkling of even reasonable suspicion for a menacing charge. So he complied. There's your compliance. And they still shot him.
You know what, Shannon, I want to, Renita, give you an opportunity to ask a question, but I just think what Attorney Glover said is just so critically important. Having a gun, legally or illegally, is not a death sentence. It really is not trial by cop and sentencing by cop, execution by cop. That is not what the law is supposed to be in the United States. And sometimes we only want it to be where we have these super perfect, or at least we try to make them super perfect victims as plaintiffs in these cases. And to me, that completely misses the point of the protections that are supposed to be available under the law. Renita, do you have a question before we go to break?
Sure. Thanks, Attorney Glover, for the work that you're doing. And I hope that the other victims who were involved in this incident also have an attorney who is as invested in this issue as you are. I think this issue just kind of clearly points out on what we've known for a long time, which is that police don't use the best judgment in all situations. And we've seen other incidents like this happen across the country where police officers have shot into public crowds, have not used great judgment. And that's why you see in some states police officers are curtailed as to when they're able to be hyper aggressive in trying to take someone in. So, for example, in some states, they're not allowed to do car chases because we know that that's very unsafe, for police officers to be doing that. And in some states, there are just parameters around when they can kind of use this kind of force. I guess I just wonder, have you had any conversations with any lawmakers? I've got some friends out in Colorado. Have you had any conversations with lawmakers around putting some type of parameters around what police officers can do in Colorado?
No, we've had ongoing conversations over the years with many of our lawmakers. I mean, it's one of the reasons why we were the first state to get rid of qualified immunity. In this particular instance, it just shows that there's a lot more work to be done. And there are lawmakers in our state legislature who are very capable and very invested in these issues. And come session, which will be, we're actually, believe it or not, already ramping up, even though it doesn't start until this winter. My hope is that we'll have some common sense policy solutions to start dealing with this. And I hope one of the things through bringing a lawsuit and bringing this to the attention of the city and county of Denver is that we can have some real changes and reforms with the customs policies and practices for the Denver Police Department.
Well, we're certainly hoping the same. Attorney Tyrone Glover, thank you so much for being on today. We wish the very best, good health to your client, Mr. Waddy, and we wish you good success in obtaining justice on his behalf.
All right, folks, back to our Roland Mark Unfiltered video in just one moment.
When we invest in ourselves, our glow, our vision, our vibe, we all shine. Together, we are Black beyond measure.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Hold no punches. I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?